Tomorrow night, Arsenal have an opportunity to reach the Champions League final for the first time since 2006 and only the second time in the club's history. But they have a massive job to do, overcoming a one-goal deficit against PSG in the Parc des Princes, away from home. I'm going to be talking you through everything Arsenal are going to have to do in this game tomorrow night to make sure they are the Champions League finalists. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Arsenal Unfiltered, your 3 times a week dose of Arsenal coverage with me, your host Mark. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you are well. I hope you are excited for tomorrow night. More excited than you are nervous, at least. I'm pretty nervous. It feels, I've said this a lot recently and it was almost going to be my intro, that this is just like the game of the season. Like it feels like every game right now is must win, absolutely have to get it done. It's probably a scenario that we are only used to in the Premier League. Last 2 seasons in the Premier League has felt like this, whereas last year in the Champions League against Bayern especially, it didn't feel like a free hit, but it was our first time back. This, all of a sudden, with the Premier League dropping off and that not being as important, these one-off shootout games are feeling really, really massive, and it's save our season territory, because I think there's a good chance after the defeat to Bournemouth this weekend that we don't finish second. So yes, we've progressed in the Champions League, we've gone a little bit further, but we might have taken a few steps back even in the Premier League. And I'm not going to go into talking about the context and all of that stuff there. I think that's one for a deeper dive after the season's over, probably around how the season's gone, etc., etc. What I am going to talk about today is how do we beat PSG tomorrow night? What do we have to do to overcome probably the most exciting side, I would say, in Europe this year? Everyone's watched them against Liverpool, everyone's watched them against Villa, and everyone's been super impressed. And of course, in that first leg against us, especially the first 25-30 minutes, they were superb. Just incredible. So, we really have to, we are going to have to pull something out the bag tomorrow night. It is going to be a big task, but let's see if we can do it. I've got some ideas as to how we can do it. Not really important if I've got the ideas, but hopefully Mikel Arteta has the ideas as well. Welcome to all of our new listeners that are joining us in the month of May. Really excited to have you here. And if you haven't already, please do consider going to your podcast app of choice and just hitting that follow button. It means you will get podcast material from me 3 times a week, reviewing matches. We do the Arsenal Roundup, of course, that's our news show, and previewing games, just so that you have a steady flow of unbiased, well, not unbiased, but unfiltered and kind of in-depth Arsenal content every single week into your listening device. Let's get into it then. So what's happened since the first leg? Obviously, we've mentioned it already. Arsenal have, I don't want to relive it. Arsenal have dropped points and lost against Bournemouth 2-1, a really terrible second half performance. I've listened to some of the other podcasts since the game, and I think people have left with a sense of generally it was a terrible performance. I actually thought the first half was fine, and I watched it, as I said in the review podcast. I listened to it on the radio live and then watched it back the next morning. So I kind of came into it with a less emotional state, and I think that's probably useful for this game, because the first half was decent. It wasn't perfect, but actually we were leading a Premier League game by half time and scored a decent goal and made a couple of good chances. So it was mainly for me a terrible second half. So that's been the Arsenal story, but of course we have the doubt on Jurrien Timber, and I think this could be really massive for Arsenal in this game. Yes, we have to go and win this game by 2 clear goals. That's very important. But we need to also make sure that PSG aren't, able to just attack. And I will come on to this and how we manage the game. We need to make sure we aren't just throwing everything at them, desperate to get goals, and leave PSG opportunities on the counter-attack. And Jurrien Timber is a big part of our defence, and defending Kvaratskhelia, Barcola, Doué, whoever ends up on that left-hand side, Nuno Mendes. He's a big part of that, and if he's missing, hopefully we'll get some positive news from Mikel Arteta later. If he's missing, we are going to have to rely on Ben White. Now, look, I love Ben White. I think he is a superb player. And he offers us so much going forward as well, supporting Saka and Ødegaard down that right-hand side. But the facts are, I just don't think he's fit yet. And we won't be able to judge him on this game if he starts. It will be unfair to kind of judge him when he's not fit against one of the best left wingers in the world right now. So I think it is really important that we have Jurrien Timber. I don't think it's anything serious. It's just a knock, but it was definitely enough to keep him out of the Bournemouth game altogether. He was in the stands. He wasn't even on the bench. Interestingly, though, obviously in the first leg we saw Mikel Merino. He was out for the game beforehand, and he came straight back in. So I wonder if this is a similar scenario, just in the sense that there is no way that Mikel Arteta is going to risk this, not one jot. So he didn't even want to have him on the bench, didn't want any stress going into Jurrien Timber. I wonder if that's the case. I hope that's the case. I kind of think it will be. I think they will do everything they can to get Jurrien Timber on this pitch, and I think probably part of that was dropping him against Bournemouth, and there'll be painkilling injections, all of that sort of stuff. Football clubs have a lot of resources when it comes to that. So that's everything that's happened in the Arsenal world. In the PSG world, they have lost their league game. They lost to Strasbourg 2-1, which is a big shock result, but there's some serious context needed. When you look at the PSG lineup, it is the very definition of rotation. So only João Neves started the game against Strasbourg, who I think will genuinely start against Arsenal. Players like Barcola and Ramos and Zaire Emery, they started. I don't think we'll see them from the start against Arsenal, but they are obviously players who might come in. And then we've got players for PSG in this game against Strasbourg, which I just don't think we'll see tomorrow night. Beraldo, Lucas Hernandez, and Mbaye. I don't think we're going to see those guys. Only Desiree Doué and Fabian Ruiz came off the bench. So in terms of players who actually got minutes, who I think will start or have a minor chance of starting, it's João Neves, Desiree Doué, Fabian Ruiz, and maybe Bradley Barcola. Maybe he'll start. So those guys are going to be fresh. Even Donnarumma didn't play. They played Safonov. Obviously, they've got their league title wrapped up. They are able to do this, and a defeat means really nothing to them as well, because in the previous week, they lost their Invincibles tag. So actually, this is kind of very inconsequential to them. I don't think it will bother them. I don't think it will matter. And if anything, you look at the 2 weekends, both teams have lost 2-1, but one team rotated heavily and have all of their stars fresh. The other team played all of their stars, played about as strong a lineup as you can get, and are now got beat and are now facing a tired set of legs in this Champions League semi-final second leg. Of course, PSG had some injury news during the break between the two legs. Dembele was the rumour, and I think he mentioned about it as he came off the pitch in the first leg, and he did not appear at all in that game against Strasbourg. However, it looks like he is back in full training from yesterday, so he has recovered from his minor hamstring strain. Obviously, that's disappointing for us because he is an absurdly good player. In red hot form as well this year, and I think we were all crossing our fingers that would be that he would be out. That's not going to be the case, unfortunately. He looks like he is going to be back. Whether he can start or whether it will be a case if he comes off the bench, I don't know. But I think having seen Gonzalo Ramos play, well, not having seen him, but having he's played in the Strasbourg game. I didn't watch that match. I think it's much more likely that he will be sat down, Ramos will be sat down, and Dembele will come back in from the start, and Ramos will join the team after kind of 60 minutes on the pitch, because they'll be hoping to have it at least a draw or something by that point, and I would imagine that'll be their tactic, or get an early goal through Dembele and then withdraw him to not risk him for kind of a longer term injury. I think that's probably how they'll do it. So lots of developments since the first leg. Obviously two big bits of injury news. One looks more positive than the other. That's the PSG way of doing things. And then both teams lost, of course. So we need a 2-goal victory. That's very clear. We can all tell that. How do we go and get it? First of all, I just want to mention about the away goals thing. I think that really has taken something out of the Champions League, hasn't it? I get why they did it, and I'm not sure how much I have missed it in the past, but wouldn't it be fun to have away goals in this scenario? You know, it would mean that if we got 2 goals, or if we got to a 2-1, 3-2 kind of victory, it would mean we go through on the away goals rule, which would be very, very exciting. Of course, if it was 1-1 aggregate, PSG would we'd go to penalties and extra time, because we'd be both on 1 away goal. So yeah, I mean, I think that adds a little extra, and it would have been quite exciting to have that rule in this tie, but I appreciate there are other reasons as to why they haven't kept that rule in. So how do we get the 2-goal victory? I think there's 3 key points. We are going to have Thomas Partey back for this game, okay? And Thomas Partey, on his own, is not the answer, I don't think. But what it does allow us to do is it allows us to push Declan Rice up, and it will allow us to have Marino up top. And I think, look, Trossard's in great form. He's playing really well. He scored a number of key goals in the Premier League recently. And I do maintain, I think he's one of the best finishers at the club. So to take him out when you need a 2-goal victory feels very strange, very odd. But the way we play with him up front, I think, is just a little bit blunted. You know, he has to come very, very deep, and we have a player, it's either Rice or Marino, driving up to fill that space from the left 8. I like it as a system. But when it doesn't work, you don't have another option. And I think Mikel Marino, he has developed an ability to drop deep, drop into good positions, and find really nice striker-like positioning on the pitch. However, you know, he does give us that ability to go long as well. I know what people will say, well, you can go long with him when he runs up from left 8, so you could still have Trossard in the team. I just think that's a little bit more difficult to do, especially in some of those moments where you win the ball back. I'm not talking from like David Raya, right? I'm talking about like Saliba nicks the ball, okay? And actually there's a lot of PSG players pressing him. It would be nice to be able to play one pass and hit it into Mikel Marino or something like that. I think that's an important thing to remember. His starting position, where he is during defensive play, is really, really important. So where he is off the ball matters to how you want to play long. So yes, in kind of set piece scenarios, or scenarios where you've got a little bit more control and PSG aren't pressing, yes, you could throw your left 8 forward and go long to them there and still get Trossard in the team. But I don't think that's what we're talking about. I think we're talking about those moments where you're in transition, maybe you need a little bit of respite or relief. You've just won the ball. Where is Marino? He needs to be off the ball. He needs to be in that high position so he can cover the ground to pin a centre-back, engage the centre-backs, occupy them, and make sure he wins a long ball into that zone. So I think that's really important. So Marino up front, go long, get over the press. That's a really, really important thing. PSG's press against Arsenal in the first leg was incredible. It's only going to get better in the second leg, right? They're going to be with their home fans. There's going to be tons and tons of energy. They're going to have, more in their legs, as we already spoke about. They rotated heavily for Strasbourg. So I think that's really, really important that we have that out ball to get over the press, because we really struggled with that in the first leg. The second thing I think we need to do is switch the ball. One thing that we did really well when we kind of got our foothold in the game, we started winning some duels. Something that we tried to do a lot is we went long and we switched the ball to Saka so many times through Declan Rice. We'd have the ball in the kind of left back spot. Lewis Skelly, Martinelli, whoever's over there has the ball, plays it into Rice. He opens up and fires a fantastic crossfield ball to Bukayo Saka, who obviously takes it down. Now, we didn't have the kind of incision to take it from that position and go and score in the first leg, which is a shame. But that also gives us an opportunity, and we can learn from that first leg. It gives us an opportunity to say, okay, where did we not get this quite right? Where did we not do enough in this zone? And I do wonder if that is a potential route to some of these goals, is just overloading that switch, making sure that whenever we're in these tight, compact areas where PSG are going to try and press us, and they're going to try and set these traps, especially around the fullback positions, I think, because they've got so much pace there. So they're going to try and set these traps, right? We need to have the ability to pop a pass into Declan Rice or Thomas Partey. He can switch the ball as well. Pop a pass into them. Those guys open up and get us out of that press with a switch. So it really will help. We kind of get into that position where we're overloading one side. We've got PSG players flooding to us, and then we switch it and we give Saka a one-on-one, or get Yuri and Timber up around him. I think that could be really, really important. So let's keep learning from the first leg. Let's go with switches to Saka. Let's make sure, because I don't think Nuno Mendes will beat Saka in the majority of those kind of duels. So if we can get him free, get him playing really high, really wide, paint on his boots, and I think that's going to be really important for us. And Saka's going to have to cheat on Nuno Mendes, I think, in this game. He's going to have to stay high. He can't track every single run. Or if he does track every single run, he has to be so fit and so quick to get up high again and cause him problems positionally and try and make Nuno Mendes think, maybe I won't go forward quite so much. Maybe I won't go forward, as much as we do. So going over the top to Marino, switches through Rice to Bukayo Saka. And I think the final thing that we must do, we must do to win this game is manage the moment. I spoke about this after the Bournemouth game, about how we're not managing energy particularly well. In the Real Madrid tie, it was very different, right? We got through the first half, and then we just accelerated into the second half, won that game 3-0, and then it wasn't necessarily so much about managing a difficult moment. It was like, let's just not concede. It was a very simple job, actually. The media narrative made it seem much, much harder than it was, with the remontada chat and all of that. But actually, that was quite a simple moment to manage. We just had to make sure that we were tight defensively, didn't give them anything away, and then when Bukayo Saka scored, that kind of just settled the whole tie down. So that was an easier moment to manage. This one we're chasing, and I think that's really different. So we're chasing this game now. We have, and Arsenal don't do well really when we're chasing games. We don't have to do it enough often. And I think it's going to be really, really important that we manage this moment and we don't chase too much. Going a goal down tomorrow night would be really disastrous. That would make it 2-0 on aggregate, of course, and make our kind of challenge even bigger. So whilst we need to have a 2-goal victory, we can't be too urgent. We can't be too desperate to score. I think we kind of saw that a little bit in the first leg. In the last 10 minutes of the game, we gave PSG lots of chances as we chased to get an equaliser. I think we were desperate for it. If we go out and do that from the early minutes, there is a high chance that PSG catch us on the counter-attack, catch us in transition and go and score a goal. So we have to let this game come to us. We have to have some faith that actually we can have a magic moment. We can get a set-piece goal. We can do something up the top end of the pitch to get us on level pegging. Remember, the moment we score, if we score the first goal, that is 1-1 on aggregate. PSG then have to play. So we cannot go out tomorrow night and go storming forward, right, and allow PSG to take the lead. I think the first goal is so massive in this game. I don't think it's a case of first goal wins it, because actually, even if we score first, PSG definitely have the capability to go and get another goal, to go and make it 2-1 on aggregate. I don't think it's the case of first goal wins it, but I think first goal for PSG might win it. We have more work to do. If we get the first goal, we obviously get ourselves into a great position, and it's kind of a straight shootout from that point. And if it's an early goal, fantastic. But let's not rush to get that first goal. Let's not leave ourselves exposed, because the moment we go 2-0 down on aggregate, we would have to go and score 3 goals in the Parc des Princes. I don't think that's likely or realistic the way we've attacked this season. So we have to be really, really intelligent. Really intelligent. Let the game come to us. Let's not go chasing too early, because PSG they'll be rubbing their hands at that idea. They might actually kind of encourage us to do that. Just thinking about it now, a decent tactical plan from PSG would actually be, let's not press them for the first 10 minutes. Okay, let's just let them come to us, give them a bit of encouragement, and then just hit them hard on the counter attack. Let them think they've got control of the game, and then just burst through and play the game in transitions. Make it a sprinting game, which Arsenal don't particularly like. Arsenal like a game that is a kind of physical midfield fight, where Declan Rice and Marino and Partey can get around people, and we can use the strength of our wingers as well. But the moment it turns into a sprinting match, I don't think Arsenal are particularly great at that. Not because we don't have athletes in the team, but just because we don't have the kind of raw, unfiltered pace of other teams, and we don't coach in that way. We're not ready for that kind of transitional game. So yeah, I think we just have to avoid that being the development. And for me, that's the most important thing. If you were to give me a choice of any of those three things, us having the ability to go long to Merino, us making the plan to kind of overload in one area, draw in a press and then switch the ball to Saka, or us managing the moment and not chasing the game, I would say not chase the game. That's if I could only have one of those three things, because 2-0 PSG is a disaster. 1-1 Arsenal after 45 minutes, let's say, or 60 minutes. Let's say 60 minutes. That is something that we can work with. So I think it's really, really important. We don't chase the game too hard. We let the game come to us, and we go and get that first goal. Okay, lineup predictions. I think it's pretty obvious for Arsenal, isn't it? It's going to be David Raya, probably Ben White or Urian Timber. I hope it's Urian Timber. Saliba, Kivior, Miles, Lewis, Skelly. That's a no-brainer for me as that back five. Thomas Partey will, of course, I think, return. Martin Odegaard, Declan Rice, with Saka, Merino, Martinelli up front. And of course, that will mean that we do have Leandro Trossard off the bench. And that is something that we can rely on. It may be the case that we, at some point, we pull Thomas Partey and we go into a 4-2-4. Martin Odegaard and Declan Rice in the middle. Trossard, Merino up front. Saka and Martinelli out wide. So that's something we could do and could go to if we needed to get that goal. So I think it's a pretty simple one for Arsenal. The team kind of picks itself. This is the last thing I want to say and finish on. Is just anything can happen, guys. Absolutely anything can happen. You just don't know in football. Look at the Arsenal women's team. They're turning it around against Lyon. They were 2-1 down, won the next leg 4-1. If you look at, even in PSG's recent history, they've been on the end of some incredible turnarounds. I remember Barcelona putting 6 past them to get through in a Champions League knockout round. Anything can happen. A PSG red card, a PSG, an Arsenal penalty. This game could open up in any way. The most important thing is that we don't allow them to score early or score the first goal. We just have to keep going, make sure we're clever, and we let the game come to us. Keep some faith. Anything can happen. I'm not going to do a prediction today because I just don't feel right about it. I don't want to be negative. I think the likelihood is, and the bookmakers are going with PSG. But like I say, anything can happen. Arsenal have the ability to win this game. Will they? I don't know. But they certainly have the ability to win it. I'm going to leave it there, guys. It's just a short one this morning. Probably just because there's not too much to say. It's a game where there's some tactical things, of course. There's some injuries. But otherwise, it's a very, very simple one. However we do it, we need to win by a 2-goal margin. That's it. However we do it. I don't mind if it's two of the scrappiest goals you've ever seen in your life, accompanied by the worst Arsenal performance of the year. I do not mind. It's a 2-goal winning margin that we need. If you like this episode, guys, please consider following the podcast or leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts from. It's super, super helpful. Helps more people find the podcast and helps the podcast grow. Appreciate you bearing with me. My voice has not been quite right this morning, so thank you so much for bearing with me on that. And all that's left to say is thank you for following, thank you for listening, and I will speak to you very, very soon.